Again, happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there. Thank you for choosing to come to church this morning. And also to all of our graduates. I see a lot of new faces today, so parents especially coming to visit your children, thank you for coming and welcome. So first of all, I'd like to say that you are all here for a reason. You're here on the foundation of more than your own merit and your own works. Do you believe that? Yes. There were generations before you that have molded you in many ways into who you are today, even if you may not realize it. And there will be generations after you who will be directly impacted by the choices that you make during this time that you're living in. So today, this is on. Today I'd like to speak a little bit to the idea that how we live today impacts our children and our future children and our world tomorrow. So actually going back to the title, I just couldn't think of a word to put in there, and I realized that actually everyone might interpret it their own way. Everyone may have a goal of how you're living right now for the sake of something better in your future. So for the sake of, a more peaceful future in your, especially in your own home, or if you, grew up in a place where you had, nations warring against each other, or cultures, a more peaceful tomorrow, wishing for a safer tomorrow, wishing for a happier and a healthier tomorrow, looking at all the problems that we have in America in terms of our health, right? A healthier tomorrow. Everyone may have sort of their own different goal to be more financially secure tomorrow, right? These are all important. None of them are, less valuable than the other. So yes. So I wanted to begin with a few examples. And first I wanted to share with you the concept of epigenetics, or specifically behavioral epigenetics. This is a newer science that deals with how we influence our genes through the choices that we make and the experiences that we have, and how these changes on a genetic level actually impact our future generations, our future offspring. So behavioral epigenetics is confirming that the trauma of our grandparents and parents can be experienced in subsequent generations. And we already know this. We know that, a fetus who is growing in a mother's womb, who, if a mother is plagued with, fear or anxiety or depression, or, living during very, very difficult times, then the fetus will be directly impacted. A lot of it is because of, the hormones and the stress, the high cortisone levels that are constantly being barraged in the womb, right? And we also know that as children grow, because of, the emotional baggage that they experience from the elders around them, we know that in many ways that's how children are shaped, and how they can carry on these sorts of issues. But we didn't realize that actually it can be rooted in such a, on the simplest, most basic molecular level. But in the same way, successes and breakthroughs can also be passed down from generation to generation. So for instance, there may be a family that's plagued with a certain addiction. We've been talking about pornography for the last couple of months. There may be, a family where, this is a big issue in the family. But if someone in that lineage works hard to address that problem, to change his or her outlook on their own value, right? From the perspective of eternal value, and also recognizes that he or she wants to uphold the sanctity of, their sexuality and their relationship towards others in that way, then the science is showing us that this can influence whether or not the children, the offspring of this particular individual, will also be as susceptible to that issue. So on a heart level and on a spiritual level, we know that this idea is true. That through our own efforts, we have the power to liberate past traumas, misconceptions about ourselves and others, and past hurts. So to illustrate my point, I'd like to show 2 video clips. One is featuring Iyanla Vanzant. Does anybody know who she is? She's a great motivational speaker. She was featured on probably a few different Oprah's Soul Sunday session shows, but I'm showing from one particular talk where the title is You Matter. And the other that I wanted to show you is from the animated film The Book of Life, where the main protagonist, Manolo, liberates the spirit of a gigantic bull who represents the spirit, the combined spirit of all of the bulls that his family, who are bullfighters, slayed during their life. So I wanted to just warn you that the first clip is a little bit sad, but it illustrates a good point, and I think that Iyanla plays it up really well. She's a really good speaker. So here we go.
Breathe on that with me. You matter. Who you are matters. What you do matters because you matter. How you do what you do matters because you have a life in your hand, and your life is in the hand of an angel. So how you spend that life moment by moment, day by day, it matters. You matter. Now, I don't know about you, but I didn't know that for a very long time. Anybody with me on that? Oh, don't leave me out here by myself. I didn't know that for a very long time because unlike many of us, or like many of us, I was raised by people who were crazy as hell. I mean, really, now, in this modern age of technology, they dress stuff up, and they say they were dysfunctional. The people that raised me were crazy as hell. Chief among them was my grandmother. And I mean, I try to be a good grandmother, and grandmothers are sacred in the world. I know they are, but and I ain't one to talk ill of the dead, but I will today. Not ill, just truth. My grandmother was crazy as hell, meaner than a wet cat. I'm telling you, my grandmother was so mean that when she came in the room, the goldfish stopped. Is she coming? Nothing wanted to be moving in her presence because she was mean. And I, as a little person, made up that her meanness was all about me. Don't we do that? Don't we take on other people's stuff and make it about us when we don't know that we matter? When you don't know you matter, you will make somebody else's crazy about you. You got your own stuff to handle. You don't have to take on anybody else's. But I made my grandmother's meanness and her crazy and her impatience all about me. And I didn't know that I mattered because I took on what was given to me as my own. We have a tendency to do that. And it was many years later, when I understood my grandmother's story. You see, we get our meaning and our mattering from our story. And if we tell a story in a way that disempowers us, we won't know that we matter even in the midst of the story. My grandmother was half Chislaki, half Cherokee, and half African American, raised by sharecroppers in Virginia. This is a problem, people. Just one of them things is enough to jack you up. Native American and black in Virginia. This was not going to turn out well for her. But I learned my grandmother's story. She was one of 11 children. Her father was a sharecropper. Her mother died when she was 7 and left the father to raise those 11 kids. And the way my grandfather, my great-grandfather, controlled his children was with an iron fist. You do this, you do that. You do this, you do that. You don't do this, you don't do that. And one of the things that he told my grandmother was she was never to go beyond a certain place on the farm. Never to go beyond the place that her father could control. And one day at the age of 9, my grandmother moved beyond the place that her father told her to go. And when she went beyond those boundaries, she was raped by the farm owner's son. And she came home and she ran home to tell her daddy that this man had hurt her. And what her father did was beat her. He beat her the same day she had been raped, because her disobedience to his rules and his regulations could have gotten them all thrown off the farm. And that was the wound that my grandmother carried. You see, there's meaning in the story no matter how tragic the story may be. And if you look beyond the events for the meaning, you'll find out that you matter even in the midst of a tragedy. My grandmother's story taught her that when you disobey, you'll get punished. And therefore, your thoughts, your needs, your feelings don't matter. What matters is that you do what other people tell you to do and what they need you to do to keep them safe. My grandmother disobeyed and got raped and then got beaten. And that experience taught her that she had to be silent about the difficulties that she experienced in life and loyal to people that didn't treat her well. And when you're loyal to people that don't treat you well, you learn that you don't matter. What I want you to know today is that you matter. Even your mistakes matter, and your difficulties matter, and your tragedies matter. It's all about the way that you look at them. And my grandmother passed that message on to me. Do what other people want you to do. You don't have a free thought. Your freedom puts you at risk. You do what other people say, and you don't matter. And it took me a long time to live beyond that teaching and that lesson and that message to learn that I matter. I matter. And it began with having a strong no. Baby, you got to have a strong no. So many of us, we got flabby no muscles. See that right there? That's a flabby no muscle. You got to have a good, strong, solid no muscle that you can stand in, and you got to have a yes muscle. You got to say no to the things that don't honor you, no to the things that don't bring you joy, no to the things that don't bring you peace, and you don't have to explain your no. You got to have 101 different ways to say no.
What is he doing? Oh!
These are his ancestors watching him.
I am humble, for tonight I understand. Your royal blood was never meant to decorate this sand. You've suffered great injustice, so have thousands before you. I offer an apology, and one long overdue. I am sorry, Toro, I am sorry. Hear my song, and know I sing the truth. Although we were bred to fight, I reach for kindness in your heart tonight. And if you can forgive, and if you can forgive, love can truly live. And
watching the Book of Life clip, what was the strategy that Manolo used to help liberate the bull? Did he fight it? No, right? Yeah, he sang an apology song to the bull. So actually, Manolo came from a long line of bullfighters, and many of them, really took it for granted and, would slay the bulls in all sorts of different creative ways, 10 at a time, etc. And so there was a lot of pressure from Manolo to be this bullfighter. But actually, in his own lifetime, he never slayed one bull. But he was put in this situation where he was put in an arena where he had to fight the spirit of all these thousands of bulls that had been slain from his family, the blood that had been shed by his family. And he chose to sing and apologize to it. And there's a lot of symbolism. This story is really based on, a lot of Mexican culture. But anyways, this is actually in the land of the forgotten. It's really like the lowest level of spirit world where nobody remembers you. And so when he recognizes the bull, sings his apology song, and then as he touches the bull, then actually the bull turns into a bunch of marigold petals, and that's also symbolic of spirits. But anyway, it's sort of like, the spirit of that bull suddenly gets elevated to a new level because it has been recognized. So anyway, it's a great movie, but that part in particular is really awesome. So I wanted to show that because I wanted to show the power of, recognizing what we carry and really taking responsibility for it, and that and really the only way that we can liberate, these burdens is through love. And in Iyanla's case, very sad about her grandmother. And for so long, she took, her grandmother's sternness as being about her, and she carried that emotional baggage. But when she realized, really where the wound started, then, she worked her hardest to change that mindset within herself. And I believe for the sake of helping her grandmother in the future, I don't know if it was just through telling her grandmother, of really recognizing that she matters and then telling her grandmother, but I think also on a deeply, spiritual level, on a way that we don't always see, when we can be elevated in our own mindset, it really impacts those around us. So, when we determine to change and improve ourselves through love, others are impacted. It's like a ripple effect. And like a ripple effect, we send out waves that impact others, waves of love, including our elders, and then of course those that came before us, as well as those that, we bear through our lineage. So please believe that it's true. Another example I wanted to share is actually a money example. This sort of is illustrates in more of a substantial way how the actions of one generation can truly impact not just the next, but even the following generation. So many of our members joined our movement, especially our older members, leaving everything behind, right, in order to follow God's providence, with a dream of really, letting go of all of the things that were previously, attached to fallen culture, to really start something new, okay? For who? For whom? For the world, and for their children, right? So, but as a result, for a lot of our members, this meant leaving school, this meant, leaving jobs, it meant, foregoing any kinds of individual passions or dreams that, many of you may have had. And also, as a result, many of our parents don't have a lot in terms of a financial foundation for the future, right? So this is classic. My father as well, devoted his whole life for Salo, for the mission. and including, taking on higher level courses later in life, accruing debt that way, and then not to mention, sending 3 of his 4 children to private universities and, getting more debt that way. And actually, a lot later in his life, more recently, he came to discover that his father, my paternal grandfather, set aside a pension for him when he was a little boy. So as my father was growing up, he was putting in money here and there, and my father never knew about it until, he reached, 65. And so, of course, you can imagine my father was so shocked, grateful. And then when he did receive that money, that it was later that my sister and I realized that actually this was impacting not just my father, but actually it impacted us, because we would no longer have to bear the debt that we would we might have inherited if that hadn't been solved within his generation. So that's another example. Okay, and the final example has to do with the incredible efforts made by the ancestors of Reverend Sam Young Moon and Dr. Hak Chan Moon, who we know as true parents. When we see, all the fancy pictures of, true father and true mother, and, all of the palaces or different, places, many times I think we forget the humble beginnings of where our true parents came from, and really, the heart of striving, on behalf of the ancestors of true father and true mother for the sake of God's will. So I wanted to read some words from the Champumogyang. Thank you. First of all, this has to do with our true mother, Dr. Hak Chan Moon. For her grandmother and her mother had a great impact on her life and who she is today. As no tree is without roots, we need to understand the people in the past who constituted the roots of true father and true mother before they were inaugurated as the true parents. It is significant that they created and maintained a good environment, good family, and good lineage until the end of their lives. My mother, Daemonim, was born on the 22nd day of the 2nd lunar month in 1914 in Jeongju, North Pyongan Province. She devoted her life completely to finding the returning Lord and then lived her whole life in attendance to him. Christians up to that time lived with the hope of welcoming the Lord, but my mother's path was different. In order to meet the Lord, she actively searched for him, rather than just hoping and waiting for him to come. Thousands of years before Jesus came, God made many preparations for Israel to receive him that remain unknown to this day. In Korea as well, prior to the liberation, he prepared many groups to receive the Lord at his return. Those groups carried out internal work for the providential history of restoration. My maternal grandmother and my mother searched everywhere for those groups. They lived their lives only for the will, preparing for the day when they could meet the Lord. In the end, their sincere and devout life of faith led me to where I am today, living a virtuous and pure life. They separated themselves from anything impure or evil. I learned this way of life primarily from my mother, but my maternal grandmother also greatly influenced me. And these are from the words of True Father about his own household. One thing I'm thankful for, to my mother and father for, is that based on our family motto, they taught me to never send anyone who came to our home away without feeding them first. They taught me never to give anyone a cold reception, not even a beggar. That is what my grandfather had practiced as our family tradition. Even if we were in the middle of our meal, if a beggar came to our house asking for food, my grandmother or my mother would immediately leave the room to serve him food. Especially in the winter, if she did not prepare it fast enough, my grandfather would take his own meal on his portable table and set it in front of the beggar. Thinking of the beggar hungry in the cold, he just could not continue eating. He would give the beggar his own food, and he did not mind if he had none for himself. Based on this family tradition, I've been doing the same for the people of the world. People from all over Korea, from the Honam region to the Yeongnam region, traveled to China through the north. On their way, they would look for the main state road, which ran close to our house. If those travelers happened to come to our neighborhood and wanted somewhere to stay overnight, our neighbors would tell them, "If you go over there, you'll find the moon's residence. You can sleep there." That's why in all 4 seasons of the year, the guest room at our house was never empty. My mother had to cook for them, and I know it caused her to suffer greatly her whole life. I tell you, a household that has fed the people of the 8 provinces of Korea will never go to ruin. Such a home would see the birth of a descendant who would be welcomed throughout the provinces of Korea. So as a final note, I just want to offer some ideas for resolving our past hurts, or breaking the chains, so to speak, okay? And actually, I think even before talking to anybody, I think really the whole idea is if we can recognize where our problems lie, what our issues are, then actually that is a huge and a major step in the right direction. So, one piece of advice is to talk to somebody. So we actually have the Blessing and Family Ministry, which is being updated all the time. And on that website, we have a listing of unificationist counselors. So they include Debbie Gullery and some others. And we also, even in our own community, we have people like Dr. Josie Hauer. Mrs. Yasutake is our Blessing and Family Ministry representative. There are many people who are more than willing to talk to you about some issues that you have. And then we also have, like-minded groups like our, recent Bridgeport Men's Group, which is really trying to actively address the issue of pornography. And I know from that we're going to have a springboard of all sorts of different kinds of groups like that. And then secondly, to talk to your children or talk to your spouse to reconnect and mend past wounds. So if that's, where the issue lies, then that's a great first step. And then I also wanted to mention to our youth, and I know a lot of our young people our high schoolers are out fundraising, but I wanted to especially say to the youth to please take some time to honor your parents, delve deeply into who they are, their deepest passions, and their hopes and dreams for your family. So our parents and also, our younger blessed couples, we've all been tasked with bringing 430 couples to the blessing by 2020. This is one goal that we have in mind as we ideally try to become tribal messiahs, right? To really bring in people and include them within our own families and to increase them by really sharing the beauty and the ideal of the blessing that has been given to us by our true parents. So this is something, the 430 goal is something that our true mother substantially gave us, but we can't do it on our own. We need each other, we need families, like-minded families to come together, but we also need parents and children to work together to make that, a reality. So both sides need to be willing to listen and work together with one another so that we can really share and bring the message of, God's beautiful ideal, of the blessing, and of the work that our true parents have been doing. So to conclude, I wanted to show a little bit more of Iyanla. I hope that you guys enjoyed the first part of the video that I showed you, and I just wanted to illustrate the idea that even on the smallest level, we're always being challenged with being the best person that we are, okay? So many times we may get tempted in little ways, and so she paints a really good picture of that.
You matter. Stop chasing things that are beneath the truth of who you are. You matter. Stop holding on the things and people that weigh you down. You matter. Stop behaving in ways that don't honor the divinity and the nobility within you. You matter. Let me tell you a quick story. So, I do love a sale. Don't leave me out here by myself. It don't even matter what's on sale. Tell me why I bought some pomegranates the other day. I didn't know what they was. Not pomegranates. See, I tell you I didn't know what they was. They was persimmons. I don't know what to do with them. But they were 3 for $2. I had to have them. I got them persimmons! They still sitting right on the side of the sink. I don't have a clue, baby. Anyway, I ran to the store because they had socks on sale. I saw it in the coupon. They had the Hue socks on sale, 3 for $10. And I do love Hue socks because they come in such a variety of colors. I really do love them, even though with my shoes on, nobody can see that the bottom of my sock is a color. But it matters. So I went to the Hue store to get the socks. They were 3 for $10. They was on sale, and I was digging. But this Hue sock, the lane is very small, and I'm blessed in areas that we won't have conversation about in this moment. And so when I bent over, one of the Hue socks that I was trying to get fell in my bag. I had a bag because I was returning a dress that I bought on sale. And so one of them fell in, and I said, okay, I'll get that in a minute, because I was really intrigued by the colors. So I was looking at the colors, and I was trying to get the socks. So I got the socks, and I went to the counter. I got 6. That would be 3 for $10, 6 for $20. Don't know what the sale is there, but I don't need 6 new pair of socks. So I got the socks, and I went downstairs because I had to go down because I had to return the dress. And so I got to the counter, and I was returning the dress, and I stood there, and I looked down, and oh, clutch your pearls, horrification, and shock. I looked down, and that pair of socks that had fallen off the rack into my bag was down there. And in that moment, a voice, a dark voice, on the way to some fast food restaurant, stopped in my brain and said, don't worry about it, you've already spent a lot of money. And when I heard that, I said, wah, wah, woo, woo, in the middle of the store, and I ran, scared the people half to death. Had the bag, I'm running, screaming to the escalator. People are looking, moving out the way. They didn't even notice that I was a lady on Oprah. So they just moving, because I was screaming like a stark raving lunatic. Took the escalator 2 and 3 steps at a time to get upstairs. And I got upstairs where I had paid for the other pair of socks, and I said to her, I got a pair of socks, I got a pair of socks, I got a pair of socks, and I got to give them back to you because I can't have these socks. And the woman is looking at me like, are you on drugs or something? And I said, here, I take these pairs. She said, well, how many socks do you want? I said, I got them, I paid for them, but this one fell in the bag and I have to have it. She said, okay. Thank you for your honesty. I said, please, let me pay you for the socks. She said, you can pay me for the socks. But here was the point. The point was that in that moment, I had to know that it mattered whether or not I took that pair of socks and put them back, because I mattered. I had to know that all the praying and meditating and standing on one foot and listening to Oprah and Deepak and everybody else, that if after all of that, a dark spirit on the way to a fast food restaurant could stop by and tell me it's okay to steal a pair of socks, everybody is at risk. You matter. What you do matters. How you do it matters. Moment by moment by moment. You have to remind yourself how I'm showing up in this moment, how I'm standing in this moment, how I'm speaking in this moment, how I'm sharing who I am in this moment, how I'm clearing and healing and releasing in this moment. It matters because I matter. You matter. Have a strong no. Stand in your yes. Make sure that every time you go to the Home Depot, your pants meet your ankles.